When I claim that the Luxembourg judiciary is one big mafia, one is tempted to say that someone is exaggerating. Well, then, hear my story. Many citizens who had anything to do with the judiciary are amazed at judgments that normally decent people cannot understand. To put it briefly, the loser is always the one where there is money to have. And that would not be possible without our judiciary. It's criminal in all areas. According to the criminal code, even judges can actually be convicted. Now, it's getting tricky. They therefore made sure that nobody can prosecute them anymore. In 2018, the then Minister of Justice, Brouts, proudly announced that the Luxembourg judiciary would be fully independent. Were there problems? Not that I know of. Is there a new law? No. How does it work? They simply abolished any authority to monitor the judges. There was a brief talk of creating a Supreme Court, but even that didn't happen. But now it's back in the conversation. And because that's so nice, the lawyers demand the same for themselves. They call it self-regulation. Plain. No external control body would any longer be permitted. Since we are all supposed to be equal before the law, everybody then could claim this for himself. That would be the end of justice as we know. Any reason? Because if I adhere to the law, you have nothing to fear. It's an admission of criminal intent. My case. May I introduce myself? Creator of payroll software for smart companies that will do it for publicity. I'm strictly honest. I pay each invoice upon receipt, taxes even in advance. We have no debt, not even a line of credit. Our crime, we are profitable. The following story is so absurd that you have every reason to doubt it, but it is 100% accurate, and it would be delighted if some journalist stopped by to check. And that would not be possible without our justice, which is criminal. They made sure no one can control it anymore, because judges also could be indicted and condemned. Now it gets strange. This means that there are laws in Luxembourg which cannot be applied because there is nobody to control them. Thus the government cancels the penal code without the law being passed by the Chamber of Deputies. Also, with the fools sitting there, it would, in my opinion, be perfectly possible, but better not to take any risk. Do I exaggerate? Well, here we go. For our work, we need and buy software tools. So we acquired one to facilitate printouts, no rocket science. The supplier, Flexus, a tiny two-person American company. In 2002, there was an agreement to pay $2,000 per year for support and $30 per client installed. But then he cut all contact, no update, no support, and no invoice. For more than 5 years, all our messages, even telephone calls, were ignored. Finally, in 2007, they replied to a final request, informing us very kindly that our customer account had been closed because they were not able to send us an invoice by letter. Stupid. But we have it in writing. In reality, there is no support. We are looking for an alternative, so we came across a company in Germany. We told them of our misadventure. It was quite a surprise when they declared themselves a representative of Flexus. But they ignored all about us and the software, which they couldn't even describe. We quickly noticed that they were not serious and they had nothing to offer. But then they had a letter sent by a German lawyer where they demanded €500,000 from us for illegal use of the software. They weren't even our partner. We explained the situation to the lawyer, stressed the absence of an invoice. He declared the thing absurd, abenteuerlich, and did not insist. We also informed him of the 10-year limitation for the right to issue an invoice within companies. It then would have sufficed to send the correct invoice. We would have had no problem paying. Up to this day, we got nothing. Never mind. They hired a lawyer in Luxembourg, Decker, Bruin & Post, the mafia, who acted on the request of the Germans who had no entitlement. But Americans are not honest, so the US supplier then established a strange representation contract for them, including the Benelux countries, obviously backdated. Well, the German spec website is exclusively in German, and they have certainly never made a single sale in any of these countries, nor in Germany, as proved by their ignorance. But the documentation proved then that we were in our rights. No problem. The argument of the strongest is always the best. They changed the charge. Instead of theft, now copyright infringement. Then followed a campaign of harassment by registered letters with the most absurd arguments, knowing that one is obliged to reply within a reasonable time, otherwise risking consent by default. In the United States, such an attack is considered frivolous and punishable, including for the lawyers. But fortunately, we are in Luxembourg where anything goes. Annoyed by these unceasing attacks, I challenged them to take the case to court, naively believing in competent and honest judges. I had in the past won lawsuits against malicious people, hence my blue-eyed confidence. Biggest mistake of my life, I didn't have a chance. They count on the fact that honest citizens normally are unaware of their rights and legal proceedings. One fine morning, 5 criminals came to my office with a search warrant, on a blank paper, without a heading, established by a lawyer, but signed by the president of the district court in Luxembourg. For those who criticize the slowness of administration, this was agreed within 24 hours. The purpose? To check whether we installed this software at our customers. Logically, then what should check with them, but this was already known and perfectly okay. To pretend utmost importance and as ultimate idiocy. It was mentioned that the operation should be top secret to avoid me fleeing. For a whole day, I was forbidden to leave the house, contact anyone, and had to accept them to copy all of our data, up to the last byte. When the phone rang, there was panic. I didn't have to tell anybody. I was threatened with arrest if I should resist. The obvious reason for this criminal operation was just plain terror. I was surprised and demanded an explanation. They produced this silly document. My reply, if you want to get paid, all you have to do is send an invoice, to which they agreed. I offered to prepare a list of all customers, but they went on copying nevertheless. The company's business data are protected, but our sources, private data, such as letters and pictures, strictly everything was taken. Data protection only in civilized countries. To sum it up, they got nothing of use. I then made a list as a base for an invoice, and 2 Belgian experts promptly declared themselves the authors, lying while they were sworn. This is a crime. But Luxembourg justice is not that petty. They then insisted on a written procedure. I had to hire a lawyer, except now there was no charge. Flexus had confirmed that the use was legitimate and that it was them who had terminated the contract. So they picked on one detail. The Flexus instructions clearly say that the install for end users is the same as for programmers. But we should not install our source code, to avoid a possible abuse. For a user to start programming himself is absurd, but there is no argument too silly to not serve in court. It was suggested that all our income come exclusively from the high-priced sale of this tool. An expert was hired. Again, no witnesses were admitted, lying by omission. No chance. We were accused of having violated copyright and we were condemned to pay for 1,000 customers $2,000 each, therefore 2 million for the loss of earnings. On appeal, the same. The judgment was obviously written by the opposing lawyers and just copied. My presence at the base were declared superfluous, recorded by writing in the judgment. A judge is supposed to be independent, at least they should have a professional conscience. Were there red flags? Plenty. Contractor sunt servanda. The supplier confirmed in writing that he aborted his commitment for a ridiculous reason, even refusing to invoice us, then complain about the loss of earnings. Nobody is allowed to ignore the law, least of all judges. Copyright infringement for software is limited to the unlawful use of the sources, which we didn't have. Who said that? The European Court of Justice, which prevails over national law, in dubio pro reo. Softkeys has never built such a tool to any of its customers. For that, only one has to check the balance sheets. Grotesque. If Softkeys in the small Kentucky had managed to sell this very bland tool for $2 million in 5 years flexes, in relation to the size of the population, should have sold 600 times more during the same period in the only United States, which would then result in a gross income of $1,200,000,000 for 2 people. The yearly income by employee would have been $120 million. They would have to send 400 invoices a day. Tough work, as they sent them apparently all by US mail. To compare, for SAP, a major IT company in Europe, it is only 250,000 euros. That is 480 times less. For Amazon, it is $290,000. In reality, judging by their invoice numbers, they sold a few hundred at most. Strange precision. Exactly 1,000 customers. Why not 1,001 or 999? This figure is obviously invented, therefore unacceptable. Up to this day, we have not reached that number. The judges did not allow me to plead personally in front of the public. However, this right is guaranteed by Article 6 of Human Rights that Luxembourg has ratified. Article 13 stipulates that this right cannot be denied. Even the Nazis did not have such an idea, and they cared not much for rights or even decency. What interest can judges have to producing a judgment that will ruin a company, and since the company does not have the means, which could turn against me in private? Softkis is a limited company, but the opposing law assured us that this would not be any obstacle, knowing in advance that the judges would cooperate. I trust them for that. I would be totally ruined. What country do they live in? For information, a judge earns around 15,000 euros times 13, and so does not need tips to make ends meet. And all in the name of the Grand Duke, would be very surprised by decisions made in his name. In a civilized country, this would cause a scandal and lead to a setup of a commission. But in Luxembourg, the buck stops nowhere. It rather flips around like a pinball. So I inform in writing the Prime Minister, not his domain. The Minister of Justice. She cannot get involved because of separation of power. No, she must ensure that the laws are respected. But said she had informed the Attorney General. I called them. It was a lie. The Penal Code explicitly provides penalties for criminal justice. When I studied it, it was her party, the Greens, that removed all control over justice under the pretext of making it independent. Was there a conflict before? No. New law? No. The Chamber of Deputies? No reply. Ditto for the Council of State. Complaint to the Attorney General? No answer. Submission of a file to the Public Prosecutor's Office. Comment, these people are just doing their jobs, so this must include extortion. In 2016, I submitted a file to RTL, Radio Luxembourg. An intimate of Radio Luxembourg confirmed to me that we should not expect anything, because RTL received 17 million euros this year to shut up. Like all the media in Luxembourg is subsidized. Works better than locking up journalists. But if someone dares to criticize, all the same, he or she will be accused of slander. It happened. That's all. No. Because once the money has left our accounts, it is laundered with makeup and fresh pampers. Lawyers can use it as they like with no trace, no taxes or other contributions. For the government administration, there will be an income shortage of more than 40%. Nobody bothered. Further details. All costs at the charge of the victim. Not only that I am robbed, I also have to pay for it. Under state supervision, admit it's so. Need I remind you that an authorization for an absurd search was obtained from the Court of Justice in one day on a blank sheet of paper without even a letterhead on it? Transparency International stated that Luxembourg is not corrupt. What did they pay them? Mr. Onso, the Luxembourg judiciary is one big mafia. And as Minister of Justice, you're the boss. I read your interview in Pampers Spam. You pled for the independence of the Luxembourg judiciary. That is so nice that lawyers are now demanding self-regulation too, in clear text. There's no longer any control over the mafia. Judges and lawyers can now break any law without consequences. Sure, you propose a superior court of justice. staffed as it seems with 6 judges and 3 other people, possibly then 3 politicians, 6 crooks and 3 idiots, so that nothing can go wrong. You refuse to consider my case. It is about respect for human rights. Your excuse, separation of powers. So bizarrely, if it fits the case, there are rules that could apply, except I didn't ask you to interfere with my process, but to make sure that I get a trial according to the rules that Luxembourg adhered to, but doesn't respect. It appears that ladies at the train station are more decent than the justice administration. And dear Luxembourgers, anyone who still makes their cross with this party in the future should not be surprised if it is his turn. Please forward this. It is also in your interest.